As we continue, I'm Father Lennox Ilusabe. Many people know me for canon law, but I'm also a philosopher. So we are here for a very big day. I'm the de facto program leader of the new program, BA in Philosophy, with a focus on peace and security. And this workshop is specifically on peace and security. And then at the end, we'll do the launching of the new program. So this time, at this moment, I'd like to invite the director of the Institute of Philosophy, Reverend Dr. Dennis Etrika, for a word as we continue. Thank you.
Maybe before I begin, the guest speakers can come forward. Reverend Dr. Leo Mwenda, Deputy Vice Chancellor Designate, Administration and Finance, and Acting Vice Chancellor, Tangaza University. Panelists and esteemed guest speakers of the day, members of philosophy faculty present, superiors and formators of Tangaza family, invited guests, students of Tangaza and the sister institutions, all the audience here present and online. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. On behalf of Tangaza Institute of Philosophy and on behalf of the organizers of this event, I take this auspicious occasion to very warmly welcome you all to this great event of the hearing and the launching of a new philosophy program termed Philosophy with a Focus on Peace and Security here in Tangaza University. 2, 3, or 10 years ago, it all seemed an impossible task. But today, it is a reality made manifest. Thank God. Thank the stakeholders and particularly members of the Tangaza University administration, through many individuals who tirelessly, consistently, and dedicatedly worked with the recommendations of the Kenya Commission for University Education to see this reality. Once more, I say a very hearty welcome to you all, and may you enjoy the day as various esteemed panelists and speakers take us along. Now, it's my honor to welcome the Deputy Vice Chancellor Designate, Administration and Finance, and the Acting Vice Chancellor, Tangaza University, Reverend Dr. Leo Mwenda, to make the opening remarks. Thank you.
Reverend Dr. Lusabe and Etriga, the conveners of this workshop, our invited guests. I see we have guest speakers from Chuka University, University of Nairobi, St. Paul's University, Canada, Ottawa, our faculty members, students, and our guests online and everywhere, good morning. So I want to, in a very quick way, extend our invitation as a university, Tangaza University College, to all of you, particularly to this workshop, which is a philosophical reflection workshop with a purpose of also launching our BA program in philosophy with a focus on peace and security. I believe as a university, we thought well in coming up with this. I believe in this philosophical reflection, you will want to guide everyone, to orient everyone to come to the realization that peace cannot come by the barrel of a gun or by the rolling of military tanks, but peace is a character that belongs to what it means to be human and comes from within the human heart. To recognize the turmoils that disturb the human heart and manifest themselves in outward behavior of recklessness and violence, and we start yearning for peace. The philosophical reflection we are hoping for is a kind that makes this recognition and ask us the fundamental question, where then is our healing? So, my brothers and sisters, in a very short way, let me say you are most welcome to Tangaza University College. You are most welcome to this workshop, and I wish you all the best. Unfortunately, I will not be staying with you because I have another meeting going on right now, but I believe this workshop will be a fruitful one for our own good and the good of the people we are sent to serve. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Father Leo, for your warm welcome and your wonderful remarkings at the beginning of this workshop. I would like to invite the participants to come in front to occupy the seats in front here. And at this juncture, I would like to introduce the presenters who will, I'll just say in short, in brief, but then they will introduce themselves if they want to add something more. At my immediate right is Professor Philip Onguni from St. Paul University, Ottawa, Canada, who's been working with us. We are collaborating with St. Paul, and we are happy that he's here to help us in the development of the curriculum of this program that we are launching. And so we are happy to have you. He's a specialist in conflict studies. Next, we have Mr. Theophilus Zengu. He's a doctoral student at Chuka University in the section of philosophy. Crispin Ongera Isaboke is my lecturer at Chuka University. He got his doctorate at the Quea and is working at the University of Chuka. He is my lecturer. Lastly, we have Father Oliver Nonan. Is the director of Shalom Center for conflict resolution and reconciliation. Is also a doctoral student here in the Institute of Social Transformation, and is on the ground. Their center is working in very tough cases in conflict resolution in those conflict-prone areas in Kenya. So we have Dr. Jacinta Maweu from the University of Nairobi, who is on the way coming. She'll be joining us soon, and we are happy to have her among us. So thank you very much. Without wasting time, I would like to invite Dr. Isaboke.
Boke, as I've been a lecturer at Chuka University teaching philosophy, but I'm also a proud graduate of the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. What every human being yearns for. So I'm making a presentation on the need for a strong foundation on peace-building initiatives on the human nature as expressed through the moral law or the moral obligation. In other words, as rational beings, we know that we have the obligation to always do that which is right. And my belief, as I make this presentation, is that any peace building with regard to sustainable peace must be founded on this human nature, on the rational human nature, which at the moral level dictates that we always do that which is right. So peace ordinarily and commonly is defined as the absence. Thus, peace is not necessarily the absence of war. And in this sense, we don't from the outward expression of man. So it's not necessarily the absence of war or conflict, but it's possible that one lacks peace even in the absence of such. So we may somehow equate peace to what we may call sound of silence, in which we find a difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone does not necessarily mean being lonely. One can be alone, but at peace, in other words, and one can be lonely even when they are not alone. They can be lonely when alone, or even when they are in a crowd. As a consequence, that's what I'm saying there, that one can be at peace, that's at the moral level. I'm going to explain this, even in a state of war or external conflict. That is peace at the political level. Yet, one can be without peace even when there is no war. So this leads us to two main questions about peace: the moral question and the political question. So these are the questions. One, that how do I ought to live a good and peaceful life, I as an individual? And that's the moral question. I've referred to above. How do I ought to live? To live a good and peaceful life. And the second question is, how do we ought to live? To live good and peaceful lives. So there is the aspect of the individual, but also the aspect of the community or of the society, the aspect of the common good. So the former is the moral question, which deals with the morally right. That means acts that are morally right, and which therefore have a connection with the ultimate end of man, which philosophers have not disputed, that is happiness. As happiness, which of course Immanuel Kant, one of the great philosophers, has also argued to show that it's only attainable through virtue. But the latter, that's a political question, requires that man, who is also social, lives in coexistence with others. So from the two questions, we have one fact, the fact that man is both an individual and a social being. He needs others for his perfection, which also entails his security in a holistic sense. And so, does the perfection prior to the perfection of the individual and guaranteed, as the immortal Aristotle would hold, or is the converse true? Conflicts in Africa are largely caused by a number of reasons, among them skewed land property structures, environmental degradation, as well as unequal political representation on the state level. In other words, resource inequities, the dissatisfaction that we are not being treated fairly when it comes to the sharing of the resources that we've been blessed with. Now, when we talk of peace-building initiatives, we are referring to sustained and cooperative work to deal with underlying economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian problems. And this is in line with the definition by the United Nations Agenda on Peace. And these problems come about due to the violation of basic rights, or rather human rights. Peace-building initiatives include measures such as disarmament, restoration of order, weapon destruction, repatriation of refugees, training security forces, monitoring elections, advancing the protection of human rights, reforming institutions, and promoting politics. Now the question is, have these measures borne fruit? Reason being, we still experience conflicts especially within the African continent. Even currently, we have conflicts in northern Sudan. We have conflicts in Somalia, in Congo, parts of Nigeria. We have conflicts in Somalia, in Congo, parts of Nigeria. But even here at home, we have conflicts in a number of places here in Kenya. So these measures, for the most part, associated with short to medium-term international intervention, a lasting solution to the problem of lack of peace and security in Africa. Apparently, this is due to the fact that these measures focus more on external indicators of peace, which may be in conflict with internal peace. And somehow, I was happy when the DVC was making his remarks that he alluded to something of the kind. The focus of the search or quest for peace, that the quest for peace that's focused on the external factors rather than on the internal. Let us see something on violations of human rights. So conflicts and wars in the continent are a result of blatant violations of human rights. This concept, human rights, is a critical concept because many times people talk of human rights even when what they are propagating is not really a human right. And I want to emphasize from the human nature, from the rational human nature. So for anything to qualify to be a human right, it must be in accord with the human nature. With the human nature. And I'm saying this because I will not talk about that later, that this explains why acts like gayism cannot be issues of human rights. It come from the nature of man. So human rights, and for that reason, human rights must be respected in all circumstances. In all circumstances. Kant puts it in much better words, that even if the heavens fall, even in the most extreme of circumstances, right must be done. That which is good must be done. It's due to that I want to argue that the moral law is the foundation of human rights, and therefore the foundation of rights and duties. The moral law states that good ought to be done. Oughtness here is an obligation. So good ought to be done, and that must be the case regardless of circumstances. The human law, therefore, the moral law, is a response to the question, how do I ought to live a good and peaceful life? And it's its extension that leads to the question, how do we, because man is not an island, how do we ought to live a good and peaceful life? The moral law, therefore, naturally assigns me as an individual rights and duties, that I have rights as a human person that must be respected. But those rights also have corresponding duties. There's that which is required of me, that which I must do to ensure that I enjoy those rights. Consequently, I have to act in conformity to the dictates of the moral law and ipso facto in respect for other people's rights. Because when you talk of rights, we also acknowledge the fact that others also have rights that also demand for a response from my side. So whatever nature bestowed on me as a right also imposes duty on all the others to act in such a manner as to enable me to enjoy it. Rights and duties are therefore correlative. Right in this sense means entitlement, and it can be equated to words like just or justice. Therefore, having one's rights respected or guaranteed implies treating one justly or fairly, giving one their due. And this is demanded by the human nature. And failure to do this is what leads to violations of human rights. Natural justice demands that human beings be treated fairly. So now, violation of rights leads to what we call internal conflict. Internal conflict. I want to argue that the source of the wars and the conflict that we experience in our societies is the individual person, the lack of peace from within oneself. So the human nature reacts against any of its violations in defense of itself. And one therefore becomes restless from within oneself because things are not right. So one is not at peace. Externally, one may appear to be peaceful, but the truth is they are not. Lack of inner peace eventually, though gradually, escalates and erupts into a full-blown war that's against those perceived to be perpetuating these violations of basic rights. Then there ensues conflicts among people of the same community, and this extends to conflicts among communities and eventually war among nations. Yet, all these people are human beings. They share the same rational nature. There is need, therefore, for a reconciliation of the two questions. That's the question about myself and the question about us. How do I ought to live, and how do we need to live? In order, therefore, to have perpetual or rather sustainable peace in Africa, there is need to realize that all rights have their foundation on the human nature, and nature expressed at the moral level through the moral obligation. Accordingly, it's only by acting in accord with the moral law that peace can prevail in Africa and beyond. There is need, therefore, for the realization that society is a whole but comprised of parts, that's individuals. Thus, the perfection of the part is a condition sine qua non for the perfection of the whole. A good society, therefore, is a just and prosperous society, a society which must be founded for peace, for sustainable peace in Africa. So whereas states have political obligations that include but are not limited to ensuring peace and security of persons, it follows as a matter of logical necessity that these obligations need to be firmly founded on the moral law, the surest guide to fulfill times by being as fair as possible. And in conclusion, therefore, while much effort for peace building in Africa has been put on the political question, how do we ought to live a good and peaceful life, and which focuses therefore on the external aspect, mostly there is need for a shift of focus to the moral question, how do I ought to live a good and peaceful life? All peace building initiatives and negotiations must be geared toward ensuring that institutions charged with the responsibility of society, like governments, dispense their duties with utmost political goodwill, and so that people at the individual level can build trust in them, that they treat them fairly in respect of their inherent dignity And in this way, I argue there shall be sustainable peace in Africa. Thank you.
Let's have a big clap for our presenter, Dr. Capuchin. What I took from his conversation or his presentation is this statement that perfection of the part is a condition sine qua non of the perfection of the whole, which is also conditioned on the moral order or natural law. And our program on peace and security is actually based on that condition, that we need to have inner peace and we need to find out the causes of conflict internally so that we can be able to have lasting peace. Thank you so much. I take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Theophilus to talk to us about Immanuel Kant's concept of perpetual peace, a remedy to extrajudicial killings in Kenya.
Good morning. My name is Theophilus Zengu Mutinda, a doctorate student at Chuka University and also a lecturer there. Today's presentation is about Kant's idea of perpetual peace and the issue of extrajudicial killings in Kenya. We'll have to go by the document presentation due to technological issues. The PowerPoint is not available at the moment, so please bear with the situation. Peace has been addressed by my previous speakers. We can understand this issue of peace from different perspectives. It could be freedom from disturbance, could be inner peace or tranquility. It could also be a friendly greeting or an order to remain silent. But peace is used to mean a cherished goal that is sought by all individuals, all societies, and states in general. It is also a process of continuous and constructive management of differences towards the goal of more mutually satisfying relations. It could also be a prevention of escalation of violence and the achievement of the conditions that exemplify the universal well-being of man. Perpetual peace, therefore, is the state of peace that is lasting, that is eternal. In other words, a complete absence of war. With the perpetual peace, therefore, we anticipate for a society without wars. However, this idea of perpetual peace does not really end or does not really give us the solution to this problem at hand, which is the extrajudicial killings in Kenya. However, the idea of perpetual peace comes in hand now to empower the solutions, to empower the measures that we've already taken, and to give us a better approach towards dealing with the situation. So what is this that we call the perpetual peace? As I've just mentioned, it is a state, or rather it is a kind of an eternal peace that is lasting, peace that is lasting. So naturally, man, or this natural nature is also in a state of war. And this state of war, when it progresses, is when now we come to a state of peace. So the state of peace must be founded, for just the mere absence of war does not guarantee peace. So these are the state of war and now transitioning to a state of peace is a path that man must undertake. In other words, it is what we call the rational course of things, because it is through that pursuit of peace that man becomes his true nature. Man becomes more peaceful, man becomes rational, he becomes social. He comes into terms with his neighbors. He becomes sociable and amiable. Therefore, the state of war is translated into the state of peace, which is founded by law. This means that law is superior to right. Law is greater and more important than right, because law establishes practical rights. It makes the rights submissive to it. In other words, law makes the rights submit to us. Therefore, when rights are placed above the law, then essentially we return to the unrestricted liberty of the state of nature, which we have said that is the state of war. Another key thing to note about perpetual peace is that it depends upon the universal hospitality. Peace, perpetual peace depends upon the universal hospitality. This hospitality must include the extension to different groups in the society, accommodating each other, living mutually together is what we call is what brings forth the universal hospitality. The superior or the more advanced group of individuals treating their fellow people or the minor groups with the appropriate attitude of openness and respect. Therefore, perpetual peace is founded on those two key points about the law being greater than the right, and then about the universal hospitality. Later on, in the course of the presentation, we will see how those two issues, those two foundations of a perpetual peace will come now to offer us better ways of approaching this issue of extrajudicial killings in the country. So what are these that we call the extrajudicial killings? An extrajudicial killing can also be called an extrajudicial execution or arbitrary execution, which is a deliberate killing of a person without the lawful authority granted by a judicial proceeding. In most cases, these extrajudicial executions involve government authorities or agents unlawfully targeting specific people for death or enforced disappearances. However, in some few incidences, we find some crime gangs and mobs being involved in such executions, like the famous Mungiki, which was very rampant in the early 2000s and the late 90s. So such crime gangs can also be involved in execution of people without a fair trial. So the term extrajudicial killings is commonly used in situations that depict that the rights of the victims have been violated, especially the most fundamental right, which is the right to life. The right to liberty as well, the right to security, and also the right to fair trial are also interfered with. Such rights are protected under the Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So such disappearances or deaths in the circumstance of the extrajudicial executions does not only affect the victims and their relatives, but also the community at large. I know most of us have examples, have had experiences of such executions. Some of us have lost our friends or loved ones through that this issue that we call the extrajudicial killings. So, so police killings in Kenya. In this paper, we are focusing mostly on the police killings and not the killings by the crime gangs or the mobs. So in Kenya, there is no law that expressly speaks to enforced disappearances. However, there are some constitutional and legal provisions that one can refer to in applying the international and regional treaty obligations. And Kenya is a signatory to such treaties and Bill of Rights, including the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances. However, we are yet to ratify, as a country, we are yet to ratify. So, with such incidences, that is the police killings, is a common incident in Kenya. And mostly, the victims who are targeted are mostly the poor, the young, or the male suspects of crime or terrorism. Since 2017, many cases have been recorded for executions and enforced disappearances, and such have been documented by the Police Reform Working Group in Kenya, which is a civil justice advocacy group. So there are also other groups that advocate for the same, which include the Mathare Social Justice Center. We also have the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. We have Missing Voices Coalition, Internal Justice Mission, Independent Medical Legal Unit, Independent Policing Oversight Authority, the popular IPOA, and many more. So there are some of the policing agencies or police agencies that have been involved or that have been implicated in these extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances. Some of them include the Armed Crime Prevention Unit, but this was scrapped off in 1999, and it was replaced with the Special Service Unit. And by the end, towards the end of last year, the last one, the infamous disappearances and deaths of people, citizens, whose bodies have been later discovered in the infamous River Yala. And the reason why they have been banned, or why that special service unit has been banned, is also because instead of, the service was formed to protect people from such, from the extrajudicial killings, but instead of protecting, now the body has become a killer itself. So instead of protecting the citizens, it has become killers itself. So police violence is systemic. Now that it's in kind of a system, kind of an organized something which has been occurring. And when such extrajudicial killings occur, then unless there is an overwhelming pressure from the media or from the public, or unless the victim is well known or well connected, you understand what the term connection in the current world means, then there is little or no follow-up for that case. That is why famous people like the late lawyer Willie Kimani and his client, a victim is of such a caliber or class in the society, then rarely does his case be followed. So in Nairobi and many other major towns, the business has been as usual. Even when the social justice activists document these cases, there are no major follow-ups. There are no direct witnesses There are no direct witness accounts to verify the police involvement in each case. However, there is a reasonable suspicion. This suspicion is derived in part from the fact that several of the deceased were on police death list, in quote. You know, death list are the list that is made or that is circulated by the police warranting death, and the informers are usually paid. So this list of crime suspects are mostly circulated in social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the rest. And when you end up in that list, in most cases, you just have to be killed, you die. This points to what we call the structural rot within the police service, of which the special service unit is a symptom rather than a rogue element. So we have several incidences, examples of such disappearances. In 2021 August, we had the two brothers from Embu, Benson and Emmanuel, who died in police custody during the COVID period. They were allegedly arrested because of breaking the COVID-19 protocols. However, later on, they were found dead and they died in the police custody. We also have, just the other day, the Indian journalist who disappeared while on a tourist vacation, and that is in July 2022, sorry. And 3 months later, he was found dead. The two journalists, the Indian journalists, they were found dead. However, it is funny that members of public sometimes show sympathy. Sometimes they gang up with the police to participate in these killings. Members of public sometimes claim that some of these people, most of these people who are killed are hardcore gangs who live by bullet, and therefore they deserve to die by the bullet. However, there are the right protocols to follow. There are the right channels to follow for justice to be offered. So there are several effects of these extrajudicial killings in Kenya. Negative effects. When these extrajudicial executions escalate, then we promote a culture of violence that people just have to die. When any crime is committed, without even a fair trial, you just have to be killed because you have seen other big suspected criminals being killed by the same thing. And therefore, the country becomes violent. Another effect is the rise of a police state, whereby the police become more powerful. And then when they become powerful, they abuse the power that has been vested upon them. Another effect is that the extrajudicial killings renders the police officers alone to themselves. In other words, they take the law into their hands. And there's no way that we can incriminate them because they claim that some of the victims have died through what we call the crossfire or the encounters with the government, with the police. Others are suspected of being a terrorist. So another effect is the violation of human rights. You know, the most fundamental human right is the right to life. But the fact that you have the right to life, this right is governed or protected through the judiciary. And when it is only the judiciary that has the power to overstep on that right. But after a thorough investigations and after the due process has been undertaken, there is also social breakdown and many other effects. Therefore, in that situation, we need a perpetual peace in the country. We need a peace to address this question, this issue. And this perpetual peace comes in two ways. It is useful in two ways. The first one is that the first important foundation for the perpetual peace in the country is when the law becomes superior to the rights. Such a law establishes practical rights which bind all humans. The practical rights shall make all other provided solutions practical and applicable. This is because the law binds everyone. Therefore, since our greatest call is to preserve human life, arrest and fair trial through a practical judicial system would provide justice to the victim, to the family, and to the community at large. The second foundation for the perpetual peace is the universal hospitality, as I had mentioned. This hospitality, as I had mentioned, includes accommodating each other in society, driven by the respect for each other's rights and freedoms. Therefore, when we all treat each other with dignity and respect, there will be a minimum overstepping on each other's rights. And this will eventually lead to each person in the society accommodating each other and treating each other with an attitude of openness and respect. Police forces will treat everyone fairly. Courts will offer justice. The government will adopt justly the recommendations to this problem, and justice shall prevail. It is good to note that these two foundations have one common feature, that they are based on a pure and practical reason. This means that they derive their action and meaning not from a sensual, but on a rational incentive. In this sense, they become practical and applicable. Their nature is purely rational and from a sense of duty and a universal good. Despite all this, to conclude, in spite of these cases of extrajudicial execution being witnessed day in, day out, all is not lost. There's a hope for perpetual peace in the country. If we seek the kingdom of pure, practical reason and all its righteousness, then the object of our endeavor, which is a blessing of the perpetual peace, shall be added unto us. Despite the state of nature being naturally one of war, peace is a possibility. If we pursue perpetual peace under the two highlighted foundations, then extrajudicial killings at very last will become a thing of the past. Thank you very much.
Would like to clap again for our presenter, to congratulate him for the presentation. One of the things so my takeaway from his presentation, the foundation of perpetual peace, the two principles, obedience to the law and universal hospitality. And this reminds me of our law in the church: do unto others what you expect them to do unto you. If we respect them, we'll expect respect. If we do good, we expect goodness, and perpetual peace will prevail. And all these, as he has said, are also based on the about peace, professionalism, building a framework to strengthen peace and security interventions in Africa. Professor Karibu.
Okay, thank you very much, Lusabe, and to all our participants. I just want to take this opportunity first to thank the Institute of Philosophy for putting together this workshop, and also the previous presenters. So I just have to say that I'm not a philosopher, so those discussions kind of provide a good foundation into understanding how the relationship between peace, justice, rights, etc. I also want to point out that This also workshop is also facilitated by the Carnegie Africa Diaspora Fellowship Program that I want to thank them for that as well. And also the collaboration between Tangaza and St. Paul University, I think, has been there for some time. So the topic of my presentation today is it's an ongoing project. It's it's still early. It's about peace professionalism. And I also want to mention that the project is funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, the Canadian Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. And it's a 4-year project, so it's just starting this year. So until 2026, 2027. So we are just starting. So it's early stages. But what I'd like to do today is just to share some of the key elements that we are trying to look at, because it relates to the topic of today. So peace professionalism. The background to the project. So this is a multi-sectoral partnership project on this notion of peace professionalism. I don't know if within the audience we are familiar with the term peace professionalism. Probably not, because it's a new concept that we are trying to explore through this project. So we have partners with several universities in North America, Latin America, in Africa, and so we are still in the process of looking at, trying to find more partners that we can collaborate with in the project, because it's still a new project. So essentially, if we look at the current state of peace and also the initiatives around peace building, security interventions, we realize that there's a growing need to improve whether peace objectives or peace outcomes, because we tend to see that donors provide more and more money that are intended for peace building, but then the results are still wanting, right? So we don't necessarily see the results of that. And one of this, the reason behind this is also measuring peace is quite difficult, right? And according to these philosophical arguments that I've just heard, the question that we can ask is, what is peace, right? Because peace can be subjective. Peace can be something that we define differently. Now, and this leads to the other important element that we have to consider. The second one is more and more we are realizing that technical know-how, experiential knowledge sometimes is not enough, right? So we can be a humanitarian, someone who intervenes in a humanitarian capacity, but the challenge is that that alone is not enough, because we are, as my colleagues have said, we are all human beings, and we also have agencies behind how we interact, right? So there's this idea, and there's the need for those soft skills that must accompany the technical know-how that sometimes we have, particularly in peace programming and peace objective, even when we're talking about evaluation of peace processes. And also what we are observing, across the survey and preliminary studies that we did, is that the graduates of, say, peace, conflict, and security studies, there's always kind of a gap, theory-practice gap, right? And what we are observing more and more students who have graduated in peace, conflict, and security studies, they go for additional training, for instance, ADR, right, alternative dispute resolution, to kind of complement some of the skills that they already acquired. Sometimes there's issue of accreditation, right? As we realize that this is a broad field, and there are a lot of people who are actually working in the field. So how do you make or come up with a framework that could standardize some of the processes, because we work for a common good, as the philosophers have said, which is to achieve peace. And if we borrow from Kant, then that perpetual peace, although Kant's ideas have also been quite, some of them have been discredited. There's also limited knowledge to this end, right? Because of there isn't any work that currently exists on this idea of peace professionalism. So we thought that this could be something to pursue. Now, what's our point of entry? The project's rationale and also the focus. So our point of entry into understanding this framework is the conceptualization of peace professionalism as a means to strengthen, one, peace practice, but also peace objectives or peace goals or outcomes, if you will. And one of the questions that we are wrestling with, which is a very broad question, obviously, is how do peace professionals know whether they possess the skills, competencies, and values that are necessary to be efficient. So how do you assess that efficiency as a peace professional? And I'll get to that in a minute. And also, what makes one an effective peace worker? So again, it still borrows from this philosophical assumption and arguments because there are some parallels with that. Now, the rationale for understanding peace professionalism within this concept relies on some of the studies that have been already conducted. If you look at the literature review on the idea of peace, security, etc., studies show that insensitive peace or conflict attitudes, or the social biases that we might have, the ambivalences that we might have, increase the fragility, right? And this is something as peace workers, as peace professionals, so we have to be aware of those situations. And my colleague here talked about extrajudicial killings and all that. And also another key point to observe here is the non-conventional path to peace profession, right? So peace workers, you don't necessarily need a specific path to be a peace worker or to be a peace professional, right? I can be a police officer, but I'm operating as a peace professional. I can be a researcher, but then I operate within those parameters as well. So this idea that there is no specific path to become a peace professional, so it brings that condition. And also, we are more and more observing that the conduct and integrity of peace workers are becoming more and more into question, right? With the incidences in Congo, Sudan, etc. Even in the so-called developed countries, we are watching everything that is happening with Russia, etc. So violations, sexual abuses, and everything. Yet these are the people who are supposed to be involved in peace work, right? So more and more questions emerge in that regard. And also, there's, in the field of peace building, there's this increased call to have a shared framework. Now, what are some of the dominant arguments that are there on why, say, peace interventions often fail? So the most dominant one is, and I think was alluded by Dr. Crispin here through the BBC argument or point, is that there's this increased lack of attention to what can be seen as the so-called everyday peace or everyday experiences that we have, in the sense that our notions of peace often differ. So, and if we have a mechanical imposition of certain values that are seen as peaceful, then it might not necessarily work, right? So the idea of peace critique, and this is pushed by Severine Otesser in a research that's done more in Congo and other countries. And also another dominant argument or line of argument is this idea that most organizations that are involved in peace or security interventions, they tend to employ result-based management perspective or frameworks when they're intervening. And what does that mean? That means essentially that they have a very narrow focus on what results are, right? And they tend to emphasize on those rather than leading this through contextual kind of inferences, right? Because we learn also from the context in which we work, and we also, it's more like a reflective processes. But those management or result-based management perspectives do not allow for that flexibility that is actually needed in any peace work. And as you know, peace is very stubborn, right? And it's a long-term process. It's not conflict resolution, right? Peace building is very different. It requires patience, etc. And also, another dominant argument is that there is need to decolonize and indigenize, obviously, peace models, right? Because if we look at the current state of even the literature in peace and security, most of these models are Western, right? And sometimes we apply them in trying to understand the local context, and there could be disconnect sometimes with this kind of application of models. We talk about liberal peace, for instance, even the idea of perpetual peace, right? Perpetual peace was also constructed within a context of a Western kind of conflicts, right? So, and that's how they understood it. So there's this notion that we need to decolonize all the models, the frameworks that we're using, and this drives kind of this project. So how do we look at all the other areas so that we can build a model that can be scaled depending on at the local, national, and international level. Now, in terms of theorizing or conceptualizing the idea of peace professionalism, how we are seeing it, we draw mainly from the sociology of professions to understand and to try and understand what professionalism actually means, right? So issues of definitions, so we want to draw more from the sociology of professions. And why we find this quite interesting or useful to this project is that it kind of unpacks all that is iterative tensions within the structure. So trying to understand as a profession, sometimes the issue of autonomy comes, the autonomy of a discipline, issue of diversity, the processes, regulations, ethics, etc., has been discussed. So we will borrow from the sociology of professions to kind of understand what we mean by professionalism in context of peace work, right? And then this will be complemented by peace theories, particularly with Pierre Bourdieu's work on peace practice. And here we are trying to just understand, for instance, the interplay between the social structures, right, that would govern what we mean by practice. So what is practice in that regard? And also some of the areas of contentions, and that means, for instance, the struggles and power relations that sometimes are so embedded in some definitions, etc. And also the individual agency, because fundamentally we are all humans. Again, going back to the philosophical arguments, right? So we want to understand the agency that can drive all that. So that's how we conceptualize this. In terms of the methodological consideration for the project, like I said, this is an ongoing, starting project. And so we are hoping for a mixed method participatory action research with a number of scholars. Now we have 9 who are working in the area of peace and security, but we intend to broaden the scope of this. 100 peace practitioners, so those who actively work in the field, so that we can collect also their views, and also the students who are in the programs of peace, conflict, and security, right? So we will do that. And the suitability essentially of this is just because it's, for all these reasons, it's an inquiry-based approach, meaning essentially that it involves that self-reflective practice, right? The questioning of knowledge, again, borrowing from philosophy a little bit. And it's participatory in nature because it invites that integrative approach to discussions, and also involving various people who will be in a project. And we also hope that this, by using this kind of methodological approach, then it's more, it's coordinated, and it also has more of a transformative potential. So high impact, high reward potential. Now, what do we really hope, in essence, to achieve with the project? Because we haven't, we're still working with this. So one is really to establish a community of practice, and we are borrowing here from Etienne Wenger's kind of idea of community of practice, right? So a network of scholars who are working in the field, a network of policy makers who are working in the field, and also a network of peace practitioners, right? Because they are the ones who are involved in a day-to-day basis of in trying to achieve peace. And I'm happy that we have Noonan with us, because actually working in the field and doing that. So we hope to establish this community of practice that will be involved essentially in the reflective processes around peace building, peace as a practice, but also as a profession. Also critique, improve those perspectives or the frameworks, and this would lead, we believe, upon the completion of the project, an improved understanding of peace as a practice, right? So, because there isn't any kind of existing research done to this end. And also bridging that knowledge gap, right? Knowledge practice gap, because what we find is that some of our students who have graduated, whether at the MA level or at the PhD level, they have to still kind of cherry pick, right? They look at all those other trainings that they might see as useful in this regard. So issue of accessibility of knowledge, the flow of knowledge between this broad group, right? So policymakers, individuals who are in this field, and also the use of that particular knowledge. The second main objective here is, and this is the core of this particular project, is actually to develop and test a system of assessment for peace professionals. So we are hoping that we'll come up with some criterias, assessment procedures that will be used to assess the efficiency of peace professionals, but also to address, say, some of the normative challenges that we see in the field of peace, security, and conflict. Like I initially mentioned, this idea of variation in skills, right? We all have different backgrounds, but with a common purpose, which is achieving peace. So how do you harmonize, not necessarily make them universal, because that would, I think the philosophers won't agree with me on that. But we don't necessarily want to make them universal, but have a level that people can function. So more of the functionality around this. So how do you bring those skills, values, and competencies, experiential knowledge to work? And so we hope to, like I said, develop matrices that we could use, some of the procedures, very painful sometimes, and time-consuming and resource-consuming as well. In conclusion, so what are some of the potential challenges or limit to this idea of peace professionalism? One obviously comes to the contestations around normativity, right? We always tend to reject things that are more normative, right? So issues of accreditation, for instance. Who will do the accreditation, for instance? Or who will police this this kind of process that we are hoping to come up with. Who decides the values, right? Because values are very different, right? They can be subjective. The competencies, how do you bring them together? So we are already kind of seeing those kind of pushbacks and also contestations around that. The other challenge, in conclusion, really is the adaptability and suitability of this kind of framework. I just talked about the process, the need to decolonize the models, right? That we often use to understand things, right? To understand conflict, to understand peace, to understand security. So how do we adapt those? And this is quite complex because conflict is never static, right? It's moving, it's evolving. Environments change, the dynamics change, the trends of conflicts also change. So how do you capture this, something that is quite evolving and moving at the same time? So uncertain environment. The third one is the issue of scaling, right? We can have a model framework that is working, but then how do you scale it at the local, national, and international level so that it produces those actionable outcomes, right? The outcomes that can be measured and be also implemented. So the scaling it could be also an issue, but again, because this is just a project that is starting, we are quite upbeat with it. And then always the continuous knowledge gap between the field, and this calls for interdisciplinarity, right? And I'm glad that even with the panels, we have different backgrounds, and also I think in the audience, and those who might be interested in the BA program will be coming from different kind of knowledge backgrounds, right? So with that, thank you.
So once more, we clap for Professor for the presentation. Thank you so much. And we have heard about the project, bringing professionalism in peace building, having a kind of a holistic approach where we'll have so many people working together to make sure that we achieve peace in the world. So whether you are a policeman or you are a philosopher or you are with everybody else who works for peace, and we all work for peace. So your approach is going to help us to have a holistic approach to this so that we can be able to have peace in our world. So thank you so much. At this point, I think we can have, we will have a change in the schedule for just a few minutes to have some questions, some 15 minutes to have questions so that we can be able to ask if we have any questions for clarifications or observations from the audience. Do you have another microphone? Yes. So your question you direct to the speaker who we want to answer to your question.
Thank you so much for the opportunity given, and thanks to the Institute of Philosophy at Tangaza, plus our presenters. Mine goes to Dr. Philip. You talked about donors who support the African government in peacekeeping. But mind you, I want to bring to your attention that it's absurd and worrying that the conflicts in Africa, they are funded more by the Western world. And those are the so-called donors. While looking at the challenges of insecurity in Africa, I give an example of the country where I'm coming from, and that is Uganda. Uganda has different security agents, some of them which are known, and that is UPDF and police. but they are different even from World Bank. So it is my, not a question as such, but to follow up. Then the Western rights bodies which we have, the human rights, should help us not to be with the government, to sideline with the government.
That Mr. Theophilus, you brought us to mind of the idea of perpetual peace. Now I thought about the word itself, perpetual. The term used is perpetual. And I subjected that to a thinking of we are addressing it in the light of conflict. And I'm just thinking, is it something that we can realize, perpetual peace, in a world where we are saying conflict is something that is evolving, and one of its target was by 2020, we should be having silencing of guns, so no places in Africa should be having guns. Maybe our last presenter, Mr. Philip, you can help us in addressing the issue of Agenda 2063, if it's something that is just ideal or something that we can realize. Thank you.
Thank you. One last one.
I like that I'm the one who's helping the CISO to balance. Thank you, sir. So my name is Wangari and Kabiru, and in this context, I convene a community of mediators in Kenya. And so we are a team of professional mediators. It's interesting to hear about peace professionalism, because even for us, it's building mediation as a professional line. And so in Kenya, we have a team that is known as certified mediators. So I happen to be part of that team, and we are growing that body. So that's a context from which I'd like to make a contribution, and probably an invitation. It's timely, and there's need for certain reinforcement for this work to be a bit more orderly. So mediation, we consider it as a tool, and ultimately so that people can be more peaceful. So in our work, we run the African International Mediation Week, and our theme has consistently been disrupting Africa's dispute economy. Probably tying into what my brother has said here. There's an economy for dispute, and it's for us to be able to, let me say, confront it. Because even ourselves, like now the work I do, means I'm thriving out of people being in dispute at the end of the day, in as much as I'm supporting them. The invitation context where I'm coming from is there's a need for engagement of these professionals in policy making. We have a very big gap. The professionals in this work do not have the proficiency to engage with policy development. So it's actually an invitation to the professors who are serving now, let me say the learners in this course, to build their capacity in engaging in policy development. Today in Kenya, the parliament passed the draft Alternative Dispute Resolution Bill 2021. It's supposed to come for public discussion. The discussions that will be there, hardly will you hear from peace people. And so at the end of the day, it becomes a legalistic document, because policy then determines which direction will money go. Will money go towards preventive? Will money go towards getting people to fight, and then now let's put money in security forces? So that's really the bigger picture invitation. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Professor Onguni to respond to the first and third, and then go to the next. Thank you.
That's a tough question to answer, and to which I actually don't have the response, right? But you know, when you're, it's true that some of the donors, obviously, there's this principle of conditionality. I don't know if we all understand the principle of conditionality, right? That we have to meet certain objectives, goals, in order to receive the funds, right? And this is not something that is new, right? It started, I think, from 1945, before even we got independence. The idea of I mean, if we look at the development literature, right? Because at the that's what we can see as a top-down in peace, and that means that we involve more and more people in the decision-making processes that would ultimately also determine where the how much even the funds come to organizations and others, because we want more of an approach that will lead to long-term solutions. Here, there were, I think the philosophers called them short-term goals, but we are looking at so hopefully it's something that would lead to what's known as positive peace, right? Than the negative peace, if I borrow from Galtang's work. So I think that kind of a response to the question. And then I'll just, because I have the microphone, so I'll just benefit from it and move to the second question that I was asked about the Agenda 2026, if it's a possibility or, again, it's something that it's in the passing. I think it's good to have objectives, right? We see that we started with yet the initial 8 millennium, 17 or 16? 17, thank you. So they were overly ambitious, right? Yet the 8 were not really fulfilled due to other issues. So, I think what's important here is the evaluation stage, what has been achieved, and also the learning process that comes with it. And this is why more and more we are realizing there is push towards this, the meal approach, right? So the others respond.
Thank you. And if I can just also add something. Kenya, we have Vision 2030. We hope we'll achieve it. If we don't, but still there are aspirations. And so it's in the same context with 2063 for the whole of Africa. We hope we will get there, and if we work towards that, some will achieve, some will not, but we have to be people of hope. Thank you. So I ask Dr. Isaboke and Mr. Nzengu.
Or there is need to look at the concept. I will respond to this by first asking, of course without requiring an answer, whether justice is necessary in our society today, whether justice is necessary. In other words, I want to say that we look at the ideal question alongside the question by the student whose name I did not capture well, and respond to them together by saying that the human being is one. The human being is one. And he has one nature, the rational nature. As such, the issue of gender and non-violence for Sister Jacinta would require that we come to the realization that the human being is one and give due respect to both gender in the search for perpetual peace. And especially our focus was in Africa. And this issue of nonviolence from the two questions that I raised in my presentation demands that what I act as I ought, I fulfill my duties and obligations as I ought as an individual, regardless of gender, and when everybody else does that, then we have
nothing much different. Since there is that natural being in us that dictates us, biologically moves us towards what nature dictates. And therefore, there are no, without beating about the bush, just as Dr. said, gayism is not part of human nature. And therefore, there cannot be demanded any right or justice for them, morally, naturally, philosophically, unless you want to go now to the legal aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, just as he has said, from a legal perspective, kind of from the philosophical perspective, also, we have the wars in the First World War and the Second World War. We have Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And then in the US, you also have these movements of civil rights in the 60s. And so for me, I would wish to understand the rights of the gay in relation to, or maybe in close connection with the rights they call civil rights. So the question would be, is there a difference between human rights and civil rights? So that's a question we can discuss at break time. So thank you very much for the presenters. We want to have a break for 20 minutes for tea, and then we will come back. Just 20 minutes. But before that, we clap for our presenters this morning. Thank you. The tea is there. You can pick your cup, and then the field is very nice with the nice temperatures and weather. We can have it there, and then 20 minutes we come back. Thank you so much.
the University of Nairobi. I teach philosophy and media studies. And today I want to present a small part of a big project, not very big, but then what I'm going to present is part of a collaborative project between scholars in Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and South Sudan on climate change, gender, and natural resources conflicts in these countries. And it peaks from where, I didn't get the name, but she was asking, she said that she has a long experience in peace building, and she's noted that one of the gaps is gender in peace building. And that is the rationale for this collaborative project. It's actually titled, Let's Do It Together, Rethinking Gender in the Mediation and Resolution of Natural Resources Conflicts in a Changing Climate in East Africa. And the reason why we thought of doing this is because we realized, one, as she rightly observed, that women are not actively involved in the mediation and resolution of natural resources conflicts yet, that the prime victims of this. And so we thought, as much as there isn't a direct link between climate change and natural resources conflicts, we would want to explore how climate change interacts with social, political, and economic and environmental factors to intensify natural resources conflicts in the chosen countries. So our aim, we've done the first phase of the research data collection phase in the 4 countries. And we want to see how the empirical evidence that we generate can be used to inform policy decisions, especially in incorporating women in natural resources conflicts. So the main aims of these collaborative projects, one is to generate empirical evidence and how climate change interacts with existing social, political, economic, and environmental factors to intensify natural resources conflicts in Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and South Sudan, and to unearth the gendered implications of these conflicts in an attempt to influence policy on gender-responsive actions and women empowerment to better adapt to climate change and to contribute to the resolution of these conflicts. So the societies in which we are investigating this interaction of climate change and pre-existing political social factors are largely patriarchal societies, and we know the place of women in those societies. So then we wanted to find out, what is the place of women in these conflicts? Do they have a voice? So we want to understand what are the common forms of those conflicts, how are they resolved, who is involved in the resolution of these conflicts, and what are the different ways in which life. So as I've said, and I had it in another, or was it a comment about 2063, someone mentioned, and we're talking about 2030 here. And climate change is one of the main challenges that stand in the way of Kenya realizing this Vision 2030. And of course, climate change is increasingly a threat globally in the realization of even the SDG goals that Philip also talked about. And the situation is made worse by the fact that most parts of Kenya are arid and semi-arid regions, and of course, northern Kenya is one of the is one of the areas that is most affected by this. So that justifies our focus on northern Kenya. And also our choice of northern Kenya was also informed by Ethiopia, because the Ethiopian side is focusing on Borana, and we also have Borana in northern Kenya. So we want to see whether there are any similarities and differences in that. And I've already said that as much as the main issue has been how do you pin, drought, like those areas, northeast, and when you talk to them, we're talking about drought. To them, that has been with them all that, drought is part and parcel of their lives. So when you're talking about drought as an effect of climate change, they're wondering, unless they've lived in their lives, because they've known drought through and through, it's not anything new to them. But then we want to see with the global changes, have they noted any maybe intensity in terms of that drought, prolonged, and is there anything new that they can? But most of the times, researchers are at pains to pinpoint, especially tying climate change and conflict, that indeed it is the changing climate that has caused this conflict. And that is, for us, how we are trying to do that is to do some sort of a climate analysis for 30 years in the chosen countries. And then we go on the ground and talk to these guys and find out, have there been, in our analysis where we note that was severe, did they, in which they would say that climate change did intensify those conflicts. So, as I've said, the main, in this one that I'm presenting here, so I'm not presenting the whole project. I just picked from the preliminary findings, migration, tying it to climate change, and how it is a source of natural resources conflict. How we collected data, we did key informant interviews with elders in those regions, with government officers, county officers, NGOs. We have many NGOs in those. We have FAO, we have World Vision, and all of that. And the reason why we are talking to these guys is so that we can find out, because most of them have programs on the ground to empower. Philip talked about decolonizing and taking into account indigenous, local measures in terms of sustainable peace. So we also want to understand whether do they come with, top down, with, ready solutions for these guys, or are they interested in understanding from their lived experiences the impact of climate change and conflict, and the best way that they think that this can be resolved. We also did FGDs with ordinary members of the public. Of course, Wajir is patriarchal, so we had to talk to women differently and men differently, again, to get their views, perceptions about their lived experiences in regard to climate change and natural resources conflicts. We also did semi-structured interviews again with members of the community, and both men and women and youth to understand how climate change affects these different groups differently. And the main, within Wajir County, of course, Wajir is very big, so we were in Abasweini ward. That is where we were collecting our data. So the findings as relate to climate change, migration, and natural resources conflicts, of course, the residents of Wajir are pastoralists, and the main source of their livelihood is livestock. Their life is communal. Land is communally owned, and social and individual worth is rated in terms of how much cattle you own. And they say that for the last, as much as they've lived, they've known drought all their life. But the last 4 years has been very bad. It has been intense. And that came out also in Ethiopia, that are saying between 2019 and now, they've never, we're talking to guys, old people around 70 years, and they're saying they've never seen anything like that, that it has been intense. Thousands of livestock have been lost. We were talking to people who are telling us, I used to own 500 herds of sheep, goat, cattle, camel, and now I only have 20 left. And it is very devastating for them. Everything has changed. And this has led to increased migration too, and from without Abasweini. So we have those who have moved from other parts of northern Kenya to the place that we were, and people from that place have also moved to other places. They told us they go as far as Somalia, they go to Congo, they come to Makueni, they come all the way, they move to quantify the distance of the migration. They were telling us moving like 800 kilometers with cattle. And we were talking to people who are telling us their family, members of their family have been away for 4 years. So they went with livestock wherever they went. Somalia, towards the coast in eastern and all of that. They've not come back. They will come back when the situation changes. So in the process of the migration, as they move from where they are to those other places, then of course, because the impact of climate change is felt across the board, then wherever they migrate to, the main source of conflict is water and pasture. Because they're looking for water and pasture for their livestock, yet these resources are strained wherever it is that they go. They told us wherever we were, these conflicts have even led to loss of life. And because when they come, now they're fighting for the few water points for this, and wherever it is, the Abasweini, we were told, compared to other parts of Wajir, it is, the climate is favorable. It was very bad, yet we were being told it's favorable. So we see when it just rains a bit, and did rain when we were there, there is influx of pastoralists from other parts, and this is a source of conflict. And they also said that because of these increased, prolonged droughts, there is an attempt to diversify their sources of livelihood, so that those who have started farming, yet land is communal there, and for them, all land and water and pasture, anything that is green belongs to livestock. So how this has become a source of conflict is that these ones who have diversified and started farming, the pastoralists will, they graze that. Because to them, it doesn't make sense for them to see green. There you've safeguarded. One, land is for all of us. So there is no private ownership of land. So then when you demarcate and you fence off some place, and that is what the NGOs are doing. World Vision told us that they're helping them to diversify. We have farmers. We even talk to farmers. People who are telling us now they've shifted to farming. But then when these guys come, they have no sense. You see, you don't have grounds to authoritatively, not even punish, but to do anything about it, because their sense of understanding of anything green, how would it, I mean, they don't understand that concept of now we are diversifying. We want to grow food. For them, food, livestock is more important than anything else because that is what defines them. That is what gives them identity. And therefore, that has also become a source of conflict, especially since these guys, you who has farmed, has no basis to claim it as your own because land is for everybody. So there is increased competition for the limited pasture and these ones who have diversified and the few water points that are there. When you listen to these people, then you feel their sense of loss. A young man we were talking to was telling us now is an orphan, so he's the head of the family, and he was telling us before he sold his goat for 1,000 bob. I asked him, how big was that goat that would go for 1,000 bob? He told me, you know, because of the drought, that those ones that have reached a point where you have to push them. You know, they don't even have energy. And this is there. I asked him, so you are a young person. Why don't you look for another? He told me, I am a pastoralist. All my life, the life that I know is pastoralism. So that is all that I know. And so trying to convince them to change would be a big task, especially for the NGOs who are trying to lobby them to change their ways of living. So I just say that it is evident from our findings that indeed climate change has worsened the already existing harsh environmental conditions in Wajir, and that has led to migration to and from Wajir, and this migration in search of water and pasture for livestock has led to conflicts within and without Wajir. Climate change has also negatively impacted in general the lives of the residents of Wajir economically and socially. Socially, I must quickly mention socially, the men was telling us, you know, in our strictly patriarchal society, men have been in charge. But now, because of the migration, is not just with livestock. Women are also migrating from the Somali woman. The place of the Somali woman is traditionally in the home. But now the Somali woman now is in Nairobi. The Somali woman is no longer, is out there. So that has socially disrupted. We asked them, how does that make you feel? They told us, as a man, it makes you feel less of a man, but what can you do? Because now you are no longer in charge. She has to go out there, look for firewood to sell. She has to go and work so that, because we know our main, what used to give us worth and might as men in the family is no longer there, which is livestock. And that is where I ended. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mawewe. Another clap for her. So what I've gotten from her is climate change is real. It's increasingly becoming the source of conflict on natural resources. You can go to Wajir and you will see for yourself. The conflicts on natural resources are in the context of pre-existing political or social systems that are patriarchal. And the big question is, in resolving these conflicts, where is the woman? It reminds me the book that I like very much. It's titled, Is Everyone at the Table? Because if we leave women behind, we are not going anywhere. So thank you, and want to invite Oliver, Father Oliver, to come and give us his presentation. And his presentation will be climate responding to underlying causes of conflict, security, and marginalization in northern Kenya. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share with you a methodology that the Shalom Center for Conflict Resolution and Reconciliation has developed over a number of years. So I work for that particular center, and our goal is to address conflicts, especially in the northwest of Kenya. But we also work in different areas, including Nakuru, Kisumu, Nandi, Kibera, Mathare, Kariobangi, and also in Mombasa. Yeah. So I suppose what I want to share with you is the methodology, and like all methodologies, I think it has to evolve. It evolves over time, as does the conflict. Conflict dynamics change, and so the methodology has to change with it as it hopes to address it, yeah? So one of the pillars of the Shalom Center is that in conflict environments where people are killed, maimed, and displaced, persistently, social and religious values such as peace, truth, justice, and mercy cannot take deep root. People cannot live normal lives or experience true peace. So that's one of the pillars, yeah? The founding pillars of the organization. And it's the experience also. I lived for 10 years in Turkana in a parish, and at the end of the parish, we had a border with West Pokot. And the villages along there, especially if you're familiar with a place called Naipa, people often disappeared for 6 months or 9 months at a time. I would find them in different villages. But they disappeared because of the fear of conflict. And yet there was a school there, there was a clinic there, there was water there. But because of the threat of violence, they could not live a normal life. And in fact, in the school that was built there, I was sitting in one of the classrooms, and along the wall of the classrooms were bullet holes. So I often imagined what the small boy or girl going to school was imagining themselves. What is their perception of life? What was their hope of their life if the classroom that they live in is full of bullet holes, you know? So I used to say when they were counting 2 plus 2, they were able to do it on the wall, yeah? 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 bullet holes, yeah? So communities, neither can communities experience sustained development, yeah? Because periodically schools, hospitals, religious, industrial, and formation institutions become inoperable or totally destroyed. And in that particular village, you could not get teachers to live there, yeah? You could not get nurses to go and man the clinic. Rebuilding, rehabilitating institutions, if we do not address the underlying root causes of conflict, attending to the symptoms and root causes is essential, but if the root causes are solved, symptoms are avoided. I think in the north of Kenya, we're familiar with places like Turkana, Marsabit, Samburu, West Pokot, East Pokot, Baringo, yeah? And they're never too far away from our news bulletins or from our media outlets. And there have been many attempts and many struggles to try and get a sustainable management framework. And the underlying causes have been established by external actors and internal actors, and they range around different things like insecurity, natural resources, identity, marginalization, proliferation of small arms. So there's an ingredient of many of those in many of the conflicts. But the conflicts themselves can be often complex and have to be dealt on a one-to-one basis. There's no overall plan that you can use to say that it can be used everywhere, because the conflict continually it's complex, it has dynamics, and the ground is often shifting underneath you. When you think you have seen it all, something else comes in as well, yeah? So those underlying causes, not limited to those, there's politicization, there's commercialization, and so forth, yeah? So Shalom developed a kind of a methodology grounded in the community, yeah? The community is at the heart of any peace building, according to ourselves, yeah? So, and then the program of working with the community is always a long process. There's no short-term solutions. So, for example, some of the conflicts in the north, I've worked for 10 years with them, yeah? For example, the West Pokot and Pokot-Turkana conflict around Kainuk, yeah? I've been in and out there for 10 years, yeah? We still haven't managed but progress has been made, yeah? So for us, involvement with the communities is a long-term commitment, because they have to be the ones who are the architects of their own future. So there are some of the foundational principles, yeah? So to be involved in humanitarian development, work without seeking to understand the root causes of conflict and poverty will never achieve sustainable peace or development. It is necessary to acquire the analytical skills and peace-building techniques to resolve conflict and human needs deprivation. The choices are between either or addressing the symptoms or root causes, or both. So this is kind of the continuum of, in one slide, of how we go about our work. First of all, there has to be a cessation of violence, yeah, for our training, you know. Violence has to stop. That's a preamble for any insertion into the conflict environment. So to stop the manifest violent conflict, that's the first thing, yeah? And that's really the responsibility of the states, the state itself, or if it's along international borders, it's also there. Then research into the root causes. And one of the things is a lot of the root causes that we establish, which I named, they're often to the benefit of external actors, yeah? But I was at a meeting one time recently, and somebody stood up and they said, we're tired of the underlying causes, yeah? We want peace, yeah? So underlying causes are important, but they need to be identified by the community themselves. And part of our training is to give the communities analytical skills so that they can identify the root causes themselves, and then leading to a negative peace. So we're grateful to John Galtung for giving us those terms of negative peace and positive peace, yeah? So often communities live in negative peace, but there's underlying latent conflict that is never resolved, yeah? So, but to get to a place of negative peace is still a process, and it's still a place to get to, yeah? Then we continue with conflict transformation, and through conflict transformation, we develop peace-building skills with the people, and then finally, your goal, ultimate goal, if possible, is to achieve a place where there's positive peace between both communities, yeah? Now let me add, when we're dealing with the communities, we deal often with them separately at the beginning, yeah? I've witnessed and seen many times where state actors and large NGOs often bring representatives from two communities. They go somewhere, they meet, they discuss the project, they discuss the peace, discuss everything, and within 48 hours, they've already started the conflict again, yeah? So our process is a bit more slower about training the community separately in the analytical skills so that they're able to understand the conflict and understand the concepts At one meeting, I was telling people that, you know, in order for you to have a sense of competency and authority to speak at forums, it's good that you learn these concepts, even though they were finding it difficult. But I said, in this world of conflict, we need to learn a new language, and I want you to have that language. And I told them that that the very concepts you are learning are the very same concepts that I teach in an elective here in Tangaza, yeah? So they're accessing good analytical skills, yeah? So the proudest moment for me is to see a member of the community stand up at a forum where there's politicians and MCAs and whatever, and be able to stand up and speak on behalf of the community and be able to tell those, often inciters, that that's not true. The underlying clause is something else, yeah? So that's one of the great achievements that you can have working with a community, that they develop their own competency and authority to be able to speak on behalf of their community and to be able to be heard well, yeah? Oh, okay. So, so entry strategy is very important going into any of the communities that we go into, especially inserting yourself and to have a legitimization within the community is very important, yeah? So meeting with some of the important individuals around is important, the chiefs, the assistant, if not the district commissioners, those people are important. And then also to know that, that as we insert ourselves, a listening exercise is very important to understand and for us to learn what the people are experiencing, yeah, before we ever start jumping in, yeah, with our methodology or anything, yeah, because we must always see ourselves as outsiders, yeah, and to come in and let the people be at the forefront of the whole process. So listening is very important, and that entry process takes into account the fact that the context and actors in the conflict evolve. Dynamics, perceptions are never static, yeah? So, so one of the objectives of Shalom is to do empirical research to find out the root causes of the conflict. You know, having trained the people in analytical skills and now to do the research with them, we're able to outline and to understand what are the underlying causes of the conflict and the emerging causes of the problem in order to inform effective interventions, peace and development and policy. So this is very important for the organization, that we try to find the root causes together with the people. And the research findings can be claimed because you validate them with the people, with the community, that this is the authoritative voice of the community and the people. There are many trainings we give over the years, but they are kind of how to become, to analyze their conflict. Yeah? So one is to equip leaders with conflict and analytical skills, applying 3 conflict paradigms, that of strategist. So that's about power, how power plays within the conflict. Peace research. So we're talking about structural violence, social structures, so forth. And then conflict research, we talk about the environment and about how the environment impacts. That is not just the physical environment, but the political environment, the geographical environment, how it impacts on conflict and how it can be manipulated so that there's enough for everybody. Yeah? Conflict transformation is another foundational training we try to help people with, so that if we want to get to a place of conflict transformation, and we'll start first with myself, then with my relationships, and then it must also start with the structures, because sometimes the structures, Galtung talks a lot about structural violence, and so often we don't see it because it's invisible, yeah? But there's structural violence in society which needs to be transformed, and there's often cultural where we say the culture has to be transformed at some stage, and we have to believe that culture is never static. It's also evolving all the time. And it is one of the root causes in some of the conflicts that all cultural disparities, can play around in the conflicts as well. And then there's also, in the recent past, especially in certain areas, there is religious transformation also that has to take place. As I say at the beginning, we train people separately, but the goal is that you come to a place where both communities want to engage with each other, You want to get to that place, and you want to hear that from the community, that we're now ready, we've been trained, we've understood conflict management theory, now we can process to meet together, So that's where we hope we can get all communities to, So because the sites have now attained a quality, conceptual and practical training on analytical skills and peace-building techniques, and they have agreed to sit together to negotiate. It's a problem-solving workshop around reconciliation, institutional arrangements, and action plans for a sustained shared future of independent coexistence are agreed on, I was telling somebody, for the last 2 days I've been in Kisumu, Nandi, and we know also in that particular area there's been a conflict. There's been a conflict in that area, especially around 2016, and it erupts a lot of time around election time. So when two communities like the Nandi and the Luo, they agree to meet with each other, and they agree to have that interconnectivity with each other so that they're able to address conflicts that are emerging, or they're able to see the early signs, conflict early warning signs, and able to meet and able to have a dialogue with each other about it, So reconciliation, again, is another pillar of the trainings, helping people understand that it's according to John Paul Lederach, peace, truth, justice, and mercy. There are three elements, because as you move towards reconciliation, you're moving towards a positive peace, where both communities are there for the good of the other. You're not selfishly looking at yourself, but you're looking at the other community and how we can coexist together in areas, Other important elements of the Shalom, sorry, the mic, Sorry about that, Other important elements of the Shalom training also is state policy, Once we have findings, we can share them with the state and other institutions. And strengthening other relevant non-government institutions and structures as well is another kind of important element. And then as a kind of we can describe it as a peace dividend, what we hope that in those conflict environments, one of the aspirations that we would have is that we would have schools that are inter-ethnic, so that children from both sides, can learn together and give a very good example to their adults and parents, So that's one of the other parts of the methodology, Because we realize that there's no parent, whether in Kenya or in any other part of the world, that doesn't want a better future for their children. So in a lot of those conflict environments in the north of Kenya, you'll find that the schools need a lot of help with solar, desks, and so forth. So those schools are identified by the community, and then we try to help them with those things, And in a lot of those schools also we have peace clubs, which are young people learning about peace and about how we can engage with the other community. I suppose at the end of the day, what you want is to have a dialogue between two communities so that they can engage with each other, find ways of solving problems, finding ways to see the early signs, be able to intervene, to get strategies, because what we know from these conflict environments is that the conflict will continue for a long time to come, yeah? There's no time where we'll be able to say that now we have settled that. There's no time that Shalom will be able to say we have settled that conflict. We can now move to the next conflict. I was telling people in Kisumu and Nandi, you have made peace. The next part of the journey is keeping the peace. Yeah? It's another whole process of doing that. But hopefully you have got people to a level of training and analytical skills that they're able to keep the peace now, yeah? And give them the tools to do that. And finally, theory without practice is empty, and practice without theory is blind. As perspectives embedded in Shalom CR's methodology of conflict, intervention, transformation, and peace building and social development projects. Thank you very much. Yeah?
Thank you very much, Father, for your presentation. Another clap for congratulating you. One thing I take away from his presentation is that conflict is complex. And there's need to address root causes of conflict, and especially for the community itself. The community should be helped should be empowered to identify root causes and to be on a journey to transform themselves so that they can have peace. First, with the negative peace, but when they transform themselves, they work together through dialogue, they can be able to have positive peace. And that they can work to maintain that peace. So thank you very much. And we want to open for some questions in next 10 minutes so that we can have the two presenters who have just presented to respond to those questions. We have Father here.
So good afternoon. So first of all, congratulations to our Father Oliver Noonan. Your presentation was very clear. As in the political philosophy of the contemporary time, when we discuss about this conflict, I think we can have two approaches. As we were presenting, maybe one is a Kantian approach, where we speak more of a difference blind approach. We don't mind the difference, but somehow we make in the concept of Lockean, like we need tolerance and so on, like we don't enter into the reason for the conflicts, but we just keep a blind eye on. Another approach is politics of difference, maybe supported by Hegelian approach, Hegelian track. So in this case, I was much fascinated maybe from your experience. You are bringing forth more the idea of community. So we can see also maybe another track, liberal and communitarian. So Hegel is supporting more of a communitarian approach. That means we need to respect the differences every community is having. Then there is no meaning in keeping a kind of a veil of ignorance, as spoken by John Rawls. We cannot keep a veil on such differences, but rather, as Gadamer says, we can enter into a context of dialogue or a fusion of horizon. When we say the other as belonging to another horizon means we cannot conclude you are so and so. Maybe one of the problem with this West, or what we say dominant epistemology, maybe in the words of Edward Said, maybe in the book of Orientalism, they say, because you conclude from what you see, a kind of problem with representational epistemology or dominant epistemology. Instead, let's sit together. Maybe it's also an answer for what one of the brothers shared, relativism. Yeah, in this postmodernism, we can understand it as a relative, but rather we can also maybe take that context as values are irreducible or immeasurable. So when I say every person, then the conflict between the margin and the sender also gets resolved. There is no sender at all. If there is no center, there is no margin at all. When we say that there are some are already in margin, then only we speak about a center. Instead, if you take maybe a presumption of value, that means every culture, every community has a value in itself, then maybe Kantian concept again comes, then we need to start with a respectful dialogue. We need to respect them. So I think I'm just adding, it's not a question, but rather, I mean, because your point was so important because you are speaking from your experience. First, we need to construct the community. Taking an individual from the community is losing his identity. So that is what I wanted to add.
Thank you. Another question?
Thank you very much, Father, for that very good presentation. I think I have known Shalom for a long time, and I just, maybe you're not the right person maybe to answer, maybe you are. Can you give us a concrete event that you can say that we did peace building here since Shalom started and you have never gone back there because people understood themselves, the community, they know they will never fight again? Have you got any place that you can tell us that? Though I also say peace is a process. Do you have a story that even a place that you can tell us, you went first here and this is an achievement? I'm not saying that you have failed, you're trying your best. Thank you.
One last one. We don't have the last one. We have it here, okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name is Teresa. I'm a CLM student here. I just want to ask, you have dealt with social, economic, and those agendas, but I didn't hear talking about cultural peace, which sometimes is related to human rights. And I'm looking at, because I believe from family, that is where individuals come. I'm looking at this child who, a girl in Masai, who is being forced to marry, is denied the education, and that home there is no peace. There is this, a child born with teeth in a certain community, and he's killed just because that condition. And also, there is no peace because there are people who are saying no, there are people who are saying yes. There's this woman suspected to be a witch, but he's killed by mob. So there's no peace in the community because this woman has family who are not happy, or they are saying it is not the way you think. There is this boy who is denied education because he's told to go and take care of the animals. So I want to understand, because all these instances, there is no peace in the community. She talked about the cultural in Northern. But I want to hear more of this because family is where the individuals come from. How do you deal with this in terms of peace, which is related to human life? Thank you.
Thank you. The first two questions are related to Father Oliver, and the last one to Tamawewu.
So for the first question for Father, I'm not sure if I got everything, but I think you were alluding to the fact that community is at the heart of everything, yeah? Yeah, and so I think there is no other for the community to become the architects of their own future. That's one of the goals of the organization that we have, and our intervention is around that, yeah? So we often talk about bottom-up processes and grassroots, yeah? But I think journeying with the community is very important as well, yeah? Some people have asked me, like, what, if you go to big meetings with NGOs, they ask you, what is your entry point? Okay, that's fine. And then they ask you, what is your exit strategy, yeah? So at some meetings, they've been confused because I tell them there's no exit strategy, yeah? You have to stay with the community as long as they want you to stay, yeah? So I don't know if that's something, because I didn't hear everything so well, yeah? And then, Sister, yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about results in peace building and so forth like that, you know? And of course, if you deal with donors, they're very results orientated, yeah? They want to see a 2-year program and a 3-year program and peace has come, but we really shy away from that, yeah? Because like conflict needs a lot of, and we have our experiences of conflict around the world, but also in these conflicts in the north of Kenya. I don't think there's any time you can take your eye off the conflict, because there's always something happening, yeah? There's some dynamics going on that you weren't aware of, or that I'm not aware of, and something goes on. So I don't believe we can ever take our eye off the conflict. But we do hope to get to a place, Sister, you know, I'm just back from Kisumu, Nandi, yeah? And over 6-7 years of training with those two communities there, the Luo and the Nandi, I was impressed, yeah, that they have come to a place, you know, where they can now, they have set up their let's call them committees, yeah, who have been trained over the 6-7 years. They're now meeting together. They're telling me yesterday that there has been no, the Luo Nandi conflict is around cattle theft and somehow around border and land, yeah. But they're saying that there has been no cattle raiding or cattle theft in the last 2 or 3 months. If 3 months, if that's a success, then it's a success, yeah? Okay. But I mean, how you measure it and whether they'll be, but the measurement, the real measurement is that when there is a cattle theft, that the communities themselves can engage with each other and solve the issue. So if that's a success, that's great, yeah? When I was leaving that community yesterday, they said, oh, when will we be back? And we told them, whenever you want us to come back, you tell us to come back, yeah? But now you have been trained with the certain analytical skills and powers to engage with each other and manage the conflict, but we're always on the side. And as I said earlier, we've made the peace, now keeping the peace is the next journey, yeah? And keeping the eye always on the conflict, yeah? Okay, thank you.
Dr. Maweu.
Thank you. I think she was actually addressing him. She just, unless I didn't get her rightly, she just said that I didn't mention about culture, but I'll still respond, then you can respond. Because I got that, unless I didn't get you. I thought you were talking to him, but then you said I mentioned culture. So, yes, I agree with you that culture is a major social factor, and that is one of the issues that we were interested as a social factor. That, as you say, does have an impact on human rights violations. And in the Somali community, how culture is a social factor that does violate the rights of women, especially. One, because of the strict patriarchal nature of the society. The women have no voice. But now they were telling us that things are changing, that we are even able to talk to women. They can, the only thing that we noted is that if we are talking to a woman in the presence of men, then she's shy. They were the ones who were telling us that some time back, even if a Somali woman was given a space to speak in front of a crowd where there are men, she wouldn't be able to speak. because of culture and religion, which are closely tied, and where it places women and boys that are not supposed to speak when men are present. And even in the resolution of conflicts, even as we speak, conflicts are resolved by elders. Elders are only men. Yes, there are no women elders. They have peace committees at the formal level, where by formal I mean we have district peace committees where we have women. We even have women chiefs and sub-chiefs, which is a big plus for them. Those are the indicators they were using to tell us we are progressing, we are making strides, and women are coming closer to the table. But indeed, it is not just in that society. I think culture is a major social factor that violates rights and can be a source of conflict at the individual level, as those individual cases you're giving, at the family level, and at the societal level. That is what I would say.
Thank you. And with that, we come to the end of the question and answer session. And this time, I would like to welcome Sister Professor Jacinda Thiambo, DVC Academic Affairs and Student Life, to give us closing remarks and the launch of the program. Thank you, Sister.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I give my closing remarks, I want to tell you who I am, apart from being a DVC academics. My name has been mentioned. I belong to the congregation of the Evangelizing Sisters of Mary. We have our general leader, Tongata Rongai. The congregation is missionary. It was founded in Uganda in 1975. And our main concern is to bring social change through evangelization. We teach, we nurse people, we take them, we listen to their stories, and so on. And so at Tangaza, I serve as the DVC academic and student life designate. Designate because Tangaza is not yet a university. We are still a college, a constituent college of the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. I want to begin by saying that God's time is the best. This is because we are finally having our BA in philosophy with focus on peace and security, which was approved by the Commission of University Education. So we want to thank God for this. It is a very rigorous exercise to have a program approved. It could even take 2 years, 1 year. And from the Institute, I've learned that this journey has taken quite a while. And so we want to thank God for this far. We thank God for the opportunity to have a discourse on peace and security today, in today's workshop. Because you have looked at different things like peace and security, conflict, human rights and justice, peace, professionalism, to mention but a few. So Tangaza University College is ready to teach minds touch hearts and transform lives by implementing this BA program. Our motto is to teach minds, touch hearts, and transform lives. We hope that the staff that is going to implement this program will look at the knowledge surrounding peace and security, the theories, so that once the students are aware of this, they'll also get to know the values that could work towards peace and security. And so we want to touch the hearts of everybody who is going to go through this program. And once we have done that, we shall have connected theory, values, and we go out there and practice. And once we do that, we hope that we shall be able to transform the lives of the students and the people they are going to meet. So I believe that the knowledge, the values, and the competencies that are peace and security related are enshrined in the program, and we are going to work towards that. We are very aware of the importance of peace and security in any country, in any community, any home. Peace is necessary for growth and prosperity. If we talk of economic stability, political growth or development, social growth, we all need peace. Those of you who have been around, I want to go political a bit because I'm a political person. When there was this Azimio maandamano on Tuesday and Thursday, I think all of us were affected. Affected in that if you are traveling from the other side of Nairobi to come to Tangaza, you wouldn't come. If you had business, you wouldn't do your business. And all that because during that time, there was no peaceful coexistence. And so that's why we are saying that we hope that this program will really help us to work towards peace building in Africa and in Kenya in particular. So what we are celebrating and launching today was a combined effort of different stakeholders. And I want to begin by saying the Institute of Philosophy, headed by the director, Father Dennis Etriga, the Institute of Theology, where the Institute of Philosophy is housed, and the dean is not here. We also have the Tangaza University Curriculum and Education Committee that worked on this after it came from the school and from the institute, the school. It went to this committee to look at it, to find out whether whatever learning outcomes were in place or how we are going to implement the program was okay according to Q. They worked hard. And after that, it went to the academic board. And finally, Choir Senate also played an important role because, as I've said, we are a constituent college of Catholic University of Eastern Africa, and before any program is approved, it must go through Choir. So I want to say that what we are celebrating today is actually an effort of so many people and all of you here, because I'm sure there was a stakeholder forum or, where we found out that there was a need for peace and security. So Tangaza University College is proud to be involved in peace building through this program. Personally, if I have time, I'll be going to listen to some of these great courses so that I learn more about peace and security. So I call upon all of us who are here, all of us here, and here I'm referring to the guest speakers, the panelists, the superiors and formators who are here, invited guests, students, anybody who is here. I want to request that you become ambassadors for this program. If we don't get students to register for this program, it will just be there in the shelf and it will not have met its objective. So please help us to market this program. This program is a civil degree program and is open to everybody. Whether you have PhD or you don't have, just come and register. So bring your relatives, friends, you know. If you are married, bring your children, tell them to think philosophically and do some peace and security studies in Tangaza. So it is my honor, therefore, to officiate the launching of the BA Philosophy program, Peace and Security, in the Institute of Philosophy at Tangaza University College. So I want to congratulate the Institute of Philosophy, and I call upon you now to think of strategies of marketing this program so that we enroll as many students as possible. This program will begin in August. So please bring us students. We are eager to teach their minds, touch their hearts, and transform their lives. To our esteemed participants of this workshop, thank you very much for sparing time to attend the workshop. If you didn't come, I wouldn't have an audience, and I would not have said what I've said. Thank you very much. And now I think we can launch. Where is the book? Is it somewhere so that I cut the ribbon and we launch the book? The program is coming, so I wait. Yes, so thank you very much, dear friends. And I can also talk of other programs as we wait for this one. Tangaza has different programs. We have education, we have social transformation, we have Bachelor in Leadership and Management, communication, theology. Of course, theology is the mother. Can't forget the mother. If we forget the mother, we shall be in trouble. So all these programs really help us to meet the needs of the people out there. So please help us to market Tangaza University College programs. Thank you very much, and may God bless all of us.
Thank you so much, sister, for your wonderful words. We give her a clap again. We thank her for the beautiful words. As we wait for the book, ask Father Dr. Dennis Trika to come and give a vote of thanks.
Sister Prof. Jacinta Adhiambo, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics and Students Life, Dear esteemed guests and the speakers of today, members of the TIP faculty present, representatives of the formators and superiors of various congregations and institutions of Tangaza larger family, the organizers of this event, ladies and gentlemen present and online, once more, good afternoon. Mine at this point in time is to register a very big vote of thanks to various people. First of all, in the first place, let me say to God for having brought us this far since the inception of this program. If it was not because it started in God, God is inspiration in God, and God is the end, I don't think the program will have come at this stage of being a reality. So we thank God for that. Secondly, I would like to thank the university administration, currently here represented by Sister Professor Jacinta Adiambo, for having given us, as the Institute of Philosophy, a full support towards this program. As she mentioned, it has been a very tedious journey of not less than 1 year. Actually, this program has taken 2 years to come to this stage. So I want to thank the university authority for their support in every way. I would like, in a very particular way, mention some names who were the greatest protagonists of this program. First in absentia is Professor Kishuki Apollinaire. Secondly is Dr. Daniel Gitonga, Director, Postgraduate Studies. Then Dr. Caroline Buya, also in absentia in Pwani University, but she's following us online. And many others who worked tirelessly, dedicatedly, and consistently. So because at certain points in time, it appeared very frustrating. In fact, it was like they were almost giving up. The demands were so high, especially from the Kenya Commission for University Education, the rules to follow in order to bring such a program. So we want to thank these people and many others for their dedication. As the professor has said, we are very hopeful and with a good reason that this program is going to be one of the key selling programs, one of the key programs that will put Tangaza University College on spotlight. Following the needs assessment and the way the presentation has gone on, we can say with conviction that the program is very relevant and it has come at the right time. Peace is everyone's concern. Again, I would like to thank the organizers of this program, few individuals who played a key role. First, to begin with, is the de facto program leader, Dr. Lusabe, and then the representative of University Canada, Assistant Professor Philip Ongunyi, and many others whose names I cannot cite. I would like to thank them. It came like a crash arrangement, but thank God, so far it looks the day is a success. You will be a witness with it. I would like to thank again the guest speakers of today, the panelists. Thank you so much for your presentation. I know it's not easy to come with such a presentation before such an audience. Definitely, you really did a lot of research, you spent a lot of time. Thank you, may God bless you for that. I think have missed if I didn't mention Tangaza Institute of Philosophy faculty. A few members here who are present. I will ask you to stand up, the faculty members, I mean the lecturers. You can see Dr. Sister Oliver there, I can see Madam Otuku. I can see, I normally call him the bearded professor, Dr. John, Dr. Kabilu Sileku, Dr. John Mundwa, Mr. Anastasio Nyaga, Dr. Ochieng Ojuang, who is carrying the most important thing now remaining, and the many others whom may not recall the names at this point in time. Thank you so much. Then the students of Tangaza University College, specifically students of Tangaza Institute of Philosophy. These are the students who first gave us, when we were looking at the needs, when we did needs assessment, who actually recommended this program very, very much. So we want to thank them for their support. You could see the way some of them posed the questions here, which, especially in the morning, the first session in the morning. They are very, very much prepared for it, and many of them are ready to enroll for this new program, which means then, at the end of the day, Tangaza Institute of Philosophy will offer BA in philosophy. One trend is ecclesiastic. The other trend is civil, with focus on peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, and every other person I've not mentioned, present here, online, wherever, thank you so much for turning up. Thank you for supporting this program. Let us support it, let us nurture it until its aims and objectives are realized. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father, for your vote of thanks. Thank you for your wonderful words. Now we want to launch with the cutting of the cake, and we have ordered a special knife. So it's coming. So we'll have to have some song. We can interact a little bit in 1 minute, and then we cut the cake. Oh. Let me put it the project. Okay. I was trying to put on some music, but yeah, but this one doesn't have the internet. I will use this one. Yeah, I want some music, but then I don't know the mic. Ah, okay, that's even better. Oh, okay. I think so. Thank you. It's not very strong, but I'll use this one to put some. I don't know which one. Yeah, because music, yeah. Uh-huh. Mhm. To this one, we could connect it here.
Yes, there's a cable that connects that system there. The laptop.
It will be.
We can also connect either through the Bluetooth, or there's that or the cable. There's not the PA system there.
Yeah.
There's a way that the cable that connects to the laptop.
Could, but I don't have the cable. I don't have the cable.
Maybe you can ask them if they have. Because I know this speaker, the sound may not be so clear.
Maybe,
Maybe you can.
We'll check with them. Okay, now we have the knife ready to cut the cake. I'd like to invite Professor Jacinta here, Father Dennis here, Professor Onguni, lecturer, one of the lecturers, philosophy, and one of the students, and one of the formators to come in front here so that we can cut the cake. Sister Oliver to come, and Brother Benedict to represent the students and the lecturers. Karibuni, karibuni. Where are we to cut it from in the middle? Oh, sisi wanaume. In the middle there. Yeah, we put it in the middle. Sister, you.
So we are going to cut this cake. And because we don't have the program book here, we are going to cut this and yeah, so that it is officially launched, even if the program is not here. And so, yeah, maybe we ask Father to read the words as I talk of the launching.
TIP, Tangaza Institute of Philosophy, launching of Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, which is civil degree.
So officially, I hereby launch BA in Philosophy with special focus in peace and security at Tangaza University College.
We want to sing the song for the kata keki. Sister, come and cut, and you come and help. So I will sing the song and you will help me. Hey. Hey, sister kata keki, ae, sister kata keki, ae, leo ni siku yetu, ae, leo ni siku yetu, ae, kata, kata, kata usiogope, kata na mtulishe, kata, kata. Yeah, now we are finished. We can.